there is a lot of change happening in the Ethereum ecosystem at the moment. It can be hard to navigate. So today, Camila Russo is back with me, the founder and CEO of the Defiant, the Defiant.io. Check it out if you want any updates on the DeFi space. My name is Benjamin Dean. Say his name and he appears. I am Director of Digital Asset Strategy at Wisdom Tree, and you are back on Crypto Clarified, the show where we help you steer through the waters in the risks and opportunities that are posed by an ever-changing digital asset ecosystem. You as listeners, Wisdom Tree Prime. You can find it on Apple and Android app stores. Hit subscribe and share, please, because we try to put good information out. And, well, of course, I would say it's good information, but it is objectively true. Subscribe and share. And you can find me on the Bird app X at benjamindean.com. Folks, let's go to Cami. You'll love it. She's so knowledgeable about the space, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Cami, welcome back to Crypto Clarified.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. Like many of our guests, recurring guests, it's great to have somebody who is so close to the space, has the ear to the ground, and can see what's going on in what is such a rapidly changing ecosystem and industry. Since we last talked, it was around 2 months ago, a lot's changed, a lot's happened, and I look to you as somebody who is an expert in this, especially with the Defiant, and listeners, the Defiant.com. That's
.io.
.io, really?
Yes. Unfortunately, couldn't get the .com, so the Defiant.io.
That's. I'm sorry, listeners. The Defiant.io. And sorry to you, Cami, because I guess the .com. That's there's a whole story about how the .co things started, and it's partly because too expensive and someone's already parked themselves on it. So anyway, the point is, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of the DeFi ecosystem? And I mean, maybe you could say 3, it could be 2 or 4 topics you're interested in.
Okay, so I think just thinking of like how things have changed since we last spoke. So one, I think the major change has been how quickly Solana meme coins have gone out of favor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, like a big, what triggered this was, it started with, I think, the Trump meme coin and the Melania meme coin.
Yeah.
I think that kind of marked the top of meme coin speculation. And then what just killed the trend was Javier Milei supporting a total scam with Libra.
Yeah. Bad.
So just horrible look.
Yeah.
And so after that, it just the whole Libra scandal just made it so clear how rigged the game was. And so traders were just not interested in being taken advantage of anymore. And so you've seen volumes kind of drain out of the Solana ecosystem. So that's one interesting theme. And then the second big theme that I'm interested in is just all the turmoil and soul searching happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. And it's from the governance standpoint with the EF, from improving the layer 2 ecosystem with its fragmentation and horrible UX, and it's in the the questions around how all of that economic activity happening in the layer 2 ecosystem is being reflected or not being reflected in the Ethereum mainnet. So yeah, lots happening on Ethereum right now, and I think like all of those discussions and just like questions, I think, are magnified by ETH underperformance and just like increased competition, uh, mostly from Solana.
Yeah, we talked about it last episode, and listeners, you can go back to that episode with Cami, and we talked about this meme coin thing. And I mean, I think I said it's not very productive economic activity. And the argument on the other side that David from Coinbase said to me, again, another episode, listeners, is, if people are doing this stuff and they're free to do it, but does it result in kind of growing the pie, is the way you'd say it in, well, at least informal economics. It's that whole thing is, well, it's largely unraveled now, but it was never productive economic activity. And I'm kind of interested in your view, Cami, on whether, because there are different networks, right? Ethereum is one, Solana's another, so on and so forth. Uh, is there kind for it to be sustainable, it needs to facilitate sustainable economic activity. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I think I said it last time. I think it's great if people want to create tokens and trade tokens and speculate and have fun. I think it's almost like a way of just individual expression, and building communities and connecting with people on the internet, and obviously speculating and trying to get rich. Like that's all part of like the like what meme coins are about. And I think it's great that people can have the freedom of creating whatever tokens they want, and that anyone is able to buy into these tokens and create these like Telegram chats where they share memes and have fun and then sell them, like fine. And it's debatable whether that's productive or not. Like, okay, being on Instagram, maybe it's not productive, but Meta is a multi-billion-dollar, like one of the most valuable companies out there. So I think like connecting with others online is a valid use case, and speculating is also valid. Like, it's a way, people, it's entertainment for some people, in the same way that people go to casinos or horse races or whatever. Like others will want to bet on meme coins, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. I think the problem here was that the game wasn't fair, wasn't like the rules weren't the same for everyone. It was rigged. So what we saw with Libra, where, just to recap, it was a basically a scam that was being promoted by uh, I'm blanking on the name of the fund that was behind it, but it was Hayden Davis was the promoter, and he had a venture fund. And he got like associates together and paid his way into speaking with the Argentine president Javier Milei. So just like horrible corruption there. and somehow convinced Milei to promote their project, which they said was intended to invest in Argentinian entrepreneurs and small businesses. But that was never the case. Like, that was never any plan to actually invest anything on any actual real business. It was just, pumping and dumping a coin off of Milei's tweet. So Milei tweeted about this project, Libra. He tweeted out the contract address. The token instantly soared to it was like a fully diluted valuation of $4 billion in like minutes. I think the actual market cap, I think, was like 1 billion or something. And then those controlling the contract, first of all, were able to buy the token on the second that Milei tweeted. So they got in super, like, with the meme coin at like very, very cheap, because they knew at the exact time that he was gonna tweet. So they bought a bunch of Libra tokens before anyone else. The Milei tweeted, the token soared, and they sold. And not only did they sell, but they also did a literal rug pull and withdrew the liquidity from the contract. They withdrew like $100 million in the Solana contract, and just stole that money. And then they also sold all of the tokens. And so, because of how public this was, and like all the on-chain analysis that was done, this was made very clear that all of the insiders were doing this, buying the token at the exact time that Milei tweeted, then selling it as soon as it ran up, and also withdrawing all the liquidity from that market. And yeah, like, after that, it really became clear how all of these pump and dump groups are coordinating to get ahead of they're paying influencers to promote the coin, and then buying ahead of time, and then selling, and just like, it's not a fair game. It's not like you're not getting in on the next meme coin and buying in the same conditions as everyone else, because there are people who have insider information and who will know which coins to buy first and when to dump. And with that information, obviously people don't want to play that game anymore, because everyone feels like they're getting cheated. And so that's what's happened. And since then, that whole trend has just unraveled. Like, the volumes are plunging. Revenue on Solana is down 90% from the top, because most of it was coming from meme coin trading. Well, same with like the main meme coin platform, Pump Fun. That's seeing a lot less activity, so that whole space has just totally crashed.
Good. It's I've got listeners, I always have a book for everything. I have a book somewhere about bucket shops. Really, like, history's going to repeat itself, just on different technology rails.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's completely unacceptable. Now, one of the consequences or corollaries of this is, why would you want to have a regulated, transparent, accessible form in which to gain exposure to certain parts of the digital asset ecosystem? That's one question. The second is, this isn't, it's just unacceptable. Like, that, and I have flagged it in previous episodes, but each cycle, and by cycle, they're roughly 4 years in length. Um, I remember the ICO cycle. I remember the DeFi summer cycle. I remember the NFT cycle. We could talk a little bit about how that works, but it is. I mean, that meme coin thing is it's completely unacceptable. Like who's trying to pull whatever wool over other people's eyes? Really, anybody could see it, but like, I guess it's animal instincts, human nature thing. And
It's like
chill
people
out.
were. It was a game of musical chairs, and you know, people were thinking, okay, I'm gonna buy. I'm gonna get in on this before and sell before it starts to dump, and that was kind of the game.
It's just, well, I guess play stupid games, win stupid prices. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not laughing
Yeah.
because it's funny. I'm laughing because that's the phrase. Um, let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about what's going on with the Ethereum Foundation and about the Ethereum ecosystem, because you literally wrote the book, The Infinite Machine, and about the history of Ethereum up to, I guess well, you could definitely correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am, 5 years ago. Uh, the what's going on there in the sense that uh, we've seen the upgrades. We know what the roadmap is. Uh, I mean, I can write Solidity code, so like it's like JavaScript. So I can see what's going on with the actual technology, but there's something going on with the organization, the foundation that has the some of the ether. What are your views on that?
Yeah. So what's happening there is that the Ethereum community is definitely feeling the pressure from there being other successful smart contract platforms. So,
Mhm.
like, yeah, we've talked about the demise of meme coins, but that doesn't mean that there's a lot of capital and volume and developer talent on Solana that people in Ethereum may view as you know, competitive to Ethereum and as Solana taking market share from Ethereum. Bitcoin is also becoming, it's always been a huge competitor to Ethereum on the like store of value front.
Yeah.
Like if some like Ethereans want to see ETH the asset as ultrasound money as the meme. So like, Bitcoin is supposed to be sound money. Ethereans say it's ETH is ultrasound money. So they want to compete with Bitcoin on being digital gold. But now Bitcoin is also competing with Ethereum as a smart contracts platform too. Like Ethereum is um sorry, Bitcoin is competing with Ethereum on the smart contracts platform too. Bitcoiners are considering whether to add OpCat, which would make Bitcoin more programmable. There's also BitVM, which is a programming language that would allow Bitcoin to become more programmable. There's Bitcoin Layer 2s. There's an emerging Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. Um, and and that's just Solana and Bitcoin. There's like all these other competing layer ones who have hundreds of millions of VC funding, like the whole Move ecosystem with Sui and Aptos and Movement. Well, and then like the more legacy layer ones like Avalanche and so on. And I mean, there's like a lot. And the difference now is like I said, like Solana is actually broke out and is meaningfully taking away market share. And so that has caused that Ethereum, the Ethereum community is kind of looking at a reason why they are not they're not farther ahead, and they feel like they are that they are losing market share, and so some have placed the blame on the Ethereum Foundation, because you see the Solana Foundation being extremely active, and just promoting all of the Solana applications and founders, and just being super online. You see a lot of people, just influencers in the Solana ecosystem, constantly shilling Solana, and like explaining why Solana is better. And it's just been like this like ongoing like flood of pro Solana content. And so the Ethereum community is like, why don't we have this propaganda machine, or like marketing machine, or however you want to call it? And so they've been asking for the EF to fill that role. The other thing that they're asking is for the EF to be more transparent, which I absolutely agree. The EF doesn't publish financial statements. There's no clarity on how it's run, on the board seats, on how governance works. Ironically, because Ethereum is this open public blockchain, but the EF itself is pretty opaque. So that's another change that people have been asking for. And so yeah, I think in part, like, yeah, there's definitely improvements that the EF could do and should do. But in the end, I think, like I said, this all comes down to Ethereans being afraid that other chains are eating its lunch. And this is where kind of all this concern and nervousness comes from. But the good side is that we've seen some changes from the EF. So they made the former executive director, Aya Miyaguchi, they made her president and put two new directors in her place, which, to be honest, I don't know them enough to say whether that's a good or bad change, but at least it's a change. They're making an effort. So they also made this council of people in the Ethereum community that would provide more that will provide feedback on what the community is doing and building and thinking. So that's all good. But we haven't seen any announcements on the transparency side, which to me was like the bigger problem. So hopefully that's coming. I don't know. I think there's optimism that the Ethereum Foundation is listening and making changes. So yeah, that's kind of on the governance front for Ethereum. But I think Ethereum has bigger problems. And yeah.
Really, you someone who's so knowledgeable about the history of it. You think it's okay? Let's go.
Yeah. I think, yeah, Ethereum is at this very interesting place where they took a bet on the layer 2 centric roadmap to scale Ethereum, which was they scrapped plans to scale the layer 1 with sharding, so they're not doing that. And instead they said, we're going to scale with layer 2s. And so layer 2s are these networks that confirm transactions back to Ethereum layer 1, but that can have cheaper and faster transactions on these other networks, roll up all the transactions, and then confirm them back to the Ethereum mainnet. So they get all the Ethereum security, but they allow for just more throughput for cheaper. And so these are all the roll-ups. And yeah, there's dozens of Ethereum layer 2s right now. Some are very successful. Coinbase has an Ethereum rollup. It's called Base. That's one of the most used layer twos. There's kind of the whole optimism ecosystem with Base is part of it actually. Base is an optimistic rollup. But there's the like OP mainnet and a whole other bunch of optimism based rollups. There's CK rollups, so these are all kind of different technologies for rollups and so on. And they've been super successful in helping Ethereum scale. So you get just, the ability to have really mainstream sort of dApps without having to pay the really high cost of transacting on Ethereum mainnet. So you pay cents per transaction, and you can have many thousands of users per second, and all of that that you would expect when trying to build a mainstream dApp. And so that's great. Ethereum can scale, but the problem is that one, the user experience on Ethereum has now become terrible. Like, it's really fragmented. You have like all these different chains.
Oh yeah, the bridging thing.
Bridging. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like
As you say, fragmented and fragmentation of liquidity across markets.
yeah,
Anyway, I'm agreeing. Like,
yeah. No, it's
Very important.
it's a pain, and you have to like have the gas token to confirm transactions on all these different chains, and like bridging takes it's not instant, so you have to wait for tokens to go from mainnet to one bridge, or from one chain to another. It's a really bad experience. So that's one problem. And then the second problem is that all of this activity happening on Ethereum layer 2s is not being reflected on the ETH price.
Huh.
So before, when you had a lot of activity on Ethereum, ETH itself would appreciate because people have to pay for each transaction, and
Like gas going in a car.
and gas, and yeah. But because like all this activity is not happening on Ethereum mainnet, and many of these rollups don't have ETH as the gas token, then like that's ETH itself, ETH the asset isn't benefiting as much from all of this activity happening on Ethereum layer 2s.
Yeah.
So, and that's because these layer 2s are only paying for Ethereum block space. So they pay to kind of confirm their transactions back to Ethereum mainnet, but they're not paying ETH validators. So they're not paying for Ethereum security at all. They're getting that for free. So they're paying for like data space, which now there's like all these proposals to make like blobs even bigger, and that's where like Ethereum layer 2 store their data. So they'll have to pay even less for that, and they're getting security for free. So it's like, I don't know, to me there's definitely something off there, like layer 2s are getting all these benefits from Ethereum, but then Ethereum, like the asset, isn't seeing all that activity reflected. And so I think that's why ETH has been underperforming Bitcoin, has been underperforming Solana, in spite of so much happening on Ethereum. So yeah, I don't know, that's a big question to me, because yeah, there's a lot of focus on solving the first issue, which is like this UX problem, and there's a path forward for that, but there's nothing really feasible to fix the second problem, which is kind of this like economic problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
The economic incentive model, which is like, why do people do things? Well, are they incentivized to do them or disincentivized to do them? A classic example is the kind of be quiet and carry a big stick, which is like, I'll hit you with a stick, right? That's Sun Tzu, but anyway. Yeah, or are you going to Adam Smith, which is like imagination and cooperation, and then work together and achieve better outcome. Incentive mechanism is the point from economics. And if indeed that's what's happening, we've seen it before when the Bitcoin network, some folks tried to hijack it and say bigger blocks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book somewhere, Big Block War or something like that. It's happened before for Bitcoin, but with Ethereum, like we've seen as well, especially with the DAO hack when they wound back the well, they essentially hard forked it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I'm just saying for the listeners' benefit, like this stuff happens. It is, I mean, it's good to see folks put under pressure because it forces them to do things correctly, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, like especially with a decentralized community of open source developers, it's like sorry, it's like herding cats. It's like, well, it's not like you can just grab the stick and hit.
Yeah.
No, it's like, okay, cats, now get in
Definitely.
line, right? And it's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so impressive what and to your point, actually, I'm in agreement with you. The Ethereum network, well, A, it's gotten to scale, and B, it wasn't an easy process. It's impressive that it got this far, and it is used for a lot of economic transactions in the world. We don't have to go into it now, Cami. We can do it next time. But I know we're coming up on time, and I always like to know what you have your eye on. So, any last thoughts about things that you find are interesting?
Well, what else? I don't know. I mean, these are topics that I'll keep watching and covering. How all these Ethereum problems develop. I think it's very much still an ongoing situation, a really important one for just the entire DeFi ecosystem. So that's something I'll continue watching. And what else? Well, from the sorry, did I lose you? Hello?
DAX
Uh-oh.
3220. DAX 3220. We've got to edit that. Don't worry, Cami, it's all good. We'll just, pick up where you were speaking.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like I kind of lost you. Like did I freeze?
I think you did. So
Okay.
it's okay. We just edit it. So just pick up where you left off, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was my network connection.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah. So yeah, Ethereum is definitely, how these questions get resolved is something that I'll continue looking at. And then in the DeFi front, I think the major theme happening continues to be tokenization and real world assets. I think in spite of like the bear market, or not bear market, but like correction, sell off, like all this volatility, the meme coin crashing, all of that, we've still seen this sector continue to grow.
Yes.
We have a story out that shows the like market cap for tokenized real world assets is at an all-time high. So still growing in spite of all the market volatility, and you're seeing more and more financial institutions wanting to participate in this after the success at BlackRock and Franklin Templeton and you guys have had. So So yeah, I think that's, to me, like, that's continues to be undercovered. Like, it's not as flashy as meme coins, but it's actually kind of where real utility is. So that's exciting that we're continuing to see growth there.
Well, I did something right in the last few years. Well, a few things, but
Mm.
it is fascinating to watch folks migrate onto different infrastructure. Cami, well, maybe you are as old as I am. I'm closing in on 40 years old, and I remember the move to internet.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
with the dial-up modems that made terrible noises, and it's like internet. And then, everything changes. This one, especially with financial services, which really at its core is about moving information around databases. I have another story for you, but maybe we cover it next episode. That your last point around what they call real world assets, which is like, well, Bitcoin's real. That's happened. It's happening, and it's growing fast. And why is it growing fast? Well, there's multiple reasons that we'll cover next episode. But anyway, it's always so nice to have you here, Cami. I always
so much, Ben.
appreciate your views, and thank you so much. I can't wait to see you next time.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, there you go, folks. Camila Russo, founder, CEO of the Defiant, the Defiant.io. Check it out for your DeFi needs. She's also the author of The Infinite Machine, excellent book about the history of the development of Ethereum. US listeners, wisdomtreeprime.com. Check it out on the Android and Apple app stores. Hit subscribe and share, please. Sharing good information is a nice thing to do, and is part of the reason we do this. You can find me on the Bird app at X at Benjamin Dean. Now, the disclaimer, and I know you've been waiting for the disclaimer. It's the most exciting part of the episode. I need to state the following. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of WisdomTree and the Defiant, and are subject to change. Anything we presented in this podcast is not intended to be relied upon as a forecast, research, nor as investment or tax advice. The information and opinions expressed in the podcast are not intended to be, they're not a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any securities, and reliance upon them is at the sole discretion of the listener. Please remember, past performance is no indication of future results. It's been great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next time.